Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Fight Chat Friday from TKD Coach Academy. This is episode 164, and as you may have gotten from the little intro there, we're going back to the World Championships in Tampere, Finland, and having a look at the minus 75 kilo semi-final between Luke Moriarty from Ireland and Ahmed Rmadan from Germany. Really nice and really interesting match, and we do have a few new stats to share with you this week as well, just to see what you think of them and if you find them helpful. So without any further ado, let's jump straight into this match.
Yeah, so this one on paper is the kicker versus the puncher essentially. So Ahmed is known to have a really good blitz and he's a bit sharp off the front leg as well, but Luke is known as predominantly a kicker and is very flexible. Obviously, for people who know of Luke, he bangs in a few head kicks most fights. So it starts off just a little bit of testing and figuring out where they're both at, a little bit of testing back and forth. Luke is aware as well of the style, and he's always trying to kind of bait in Ahmed to try and make something happen. Because he has that kicking ability, obviously his range is going to be a little bit longer, which makes it a bit trickier for anybody who's trying to get in with a blitz.
Yeah, absolutely, and we can see initially even the difference in the stances. So Ahmed will tend towards a slightly longer and lower stance, Luke towards a slightly shorter and taller stance with the weight a little bit more leaning towards his back leg. And we can also see a little bit of a difference in relation to how they're going to use their front hand as the match progresses. So we would expect very, very nice entry there. We would expect to see that Ahmed is going to test a little bit more with the front hand and try to draw some reactions out of Luke so that he can close that distance and get into contact.
Yeah, it's very hard for you to be able to bypass that distance that Luke has without getting through that leg. So you have to be very active on the outside with testing, blitzing, and even setting up other shots. So I think you can't really point fight Luke, to be honest. I think you're going to have to set shots up to negate that distance in the middle ground and then try get the close range if you want to. And he's a master at being able to master that range. Anytime that someone comes in, he just plucks them right on the hip with that strong side kick, and it's very, very effective. And then as soon as you kind of time that and feel comfortable with that, he comes over the top with a kick like that.
Yeah, and what we're really looking for from Ahmed here is to create broken play. So if he can make that initial entry, so for example off that spinning back kick there, if he could make that entry and then engage with hands, look to finish, we'd expect that he'd start to see the better of the exchanges over time. So far Luke has kept it to only one messy exchange, which is why we can see he's still keeping that lead there on the second flag in particular. So it suits Luke to keep it distant, to keep it clean, and it suits Ahmed to get inside that leg range here like this and make it messy. Luke with a good defensive sidekick as you retreat to the edge of the ring there.
Yeah, like we always talk about as well, that if you're going to be the puncher, you cannot be outworked. And we'll see in the stats later, Luke actually controlled the overall work rate as well in terms of volume of shots. So that is something that Ahmed needs to come into the second round with now, a little bit of a higher work rate, especially losing as well 3-0 at the moment. He needs to up the work rate and also try to outscore Luke on a 3-to-1 ratio in terms of his volume and output.
In terms of decision making on that back mat or the corner of the ring as well, Luke has on a couple of occasions there chosen to concede the warning and exit on the kind of like upside, taking a defensive sidekick on the way out. So he's looking to pick a score as he exits, and more importantly he's looking to deny Ahmed that opportunity to score. Ahmed's going to have to work pretty hard to bring Luke back to this position where he's on the edge of the ring and having to make a last mat decision. So when Luke is making that decision to take the warning, it is somewhat more of a calculated decision as to whether or not it's worth risking the score from Ahmed.
Yeah, that last little clip there as well is something that I really like from Luke with his front leg. He varies up the distance on it. Sometimes it's a very, very short carry and his knee is nearly into his chest. And then sometimes he's a very long extension on that front leg, making the longest distance possible to the hip like we see here. So I think that's one of the things that makes Luke's really effective off that front leg. And of course his hands have improved a lot. So he's able to match people really well now with the hands as well, which allows him to not get sucked into a match where he's going to be kind of drawn out with the hands too much. He's able to match generally quite well. But nice little turning kick fit in there. I don't know if Hecho was called before by the referee, but
I think that was one for holding. That foul was for holding on Luke, and I think that's fair enough. He did kind of negate Ahmed's hands by holding on there in contact, and of course as things are in ITF, that's, you know, it's effectively like obstruction. You're stopping your opponent from having the opportunity to score, so it carries a foul. And of course all those fouls are equal in terms of if you build up 3 of them, you're disqualified, so you want to be very careful about that.
The last exchange was actually one of Ahmed's best, and I would actually like to see him do a little bit more of that. But he's squeezing Luke to the edge, using his own front leg to squeeze the space a little bit, and even negate or cancel Luke's front leg by just clashing, and then getting to the hands when he's on the edge of the ring, because we know Luke, he's quite comfortable of just moving back and exiting, like you said earlier. So that was something that he could have done more, Ahmed, to be a bit more successful. But then Luke turns it on again and pushes forward, and this is a cracker. Last couple of seconds when you need to pull out the stops, Luke was able to get a head kick and a body kick. So fair play to him. He got that. So he always has it in play. He always has that bullet if he needs it. So 3-1 down, 14 seconds left. Ahmed's trying to move around, picks a good moment to go, runs into the kick, and then bang, right up to the head. So I think Luke is one of the few guys that could pull that off, to be fair to him. So
I've actually just gone back to have a look at the cards here, and it's one that I hadn't pre-prepared, but I was looking to see. So Ahmed, as he's pushing back, is really considering he's on those 2 warnings, and he doesn't want. He's thinking to himself he doesn't want to concede it. But I think only the draw is on the cards here.
That's a 2-1-1 will be available, is it?
Yeah. So Luke is it's going to go to 2-1-1, but it's so hard to see that under pressure that when he arrives at this position back here and he's being pushed just upcoming, when he's being pushed back by Luke here, he probably needs to actually take the safer option and take the warning.
I think so too. I think maybe a couple of seconds beforehand, Adrian, it was actually he had an opportunity to pull towards the right of the screen.
Yes.
And I think that might have been the better option instead of pulling back into left in towards the corner. So if we could go back just maybe the last 20 seconds possibly. Yeah, around here. So I think this is a good opportunity, easy in hindsight, of course.
Yes.
But as he has a lot of
space in the back right.
Mat space behind him there, and he would have been a better option instead of pushing himself to the corner. Now again, he could have stepped out there as well and taken that warning, but credit to him, he stayed in the fight and tried to go for it. And it's actually a good move to be able to just pull someone around there and go with the hands. He was just unfortunate that Luke was ready with that side kick and then bang up to the head with the high turning kick. Great finish to a very high level fight.
Absolutely. But it just shows as well how hard it is to actually be able to pull down that incredibly critical information off the board and, make a snapshot decision around the game state and what you need to do. You really, really need to be able to lean into the 2 parties in the ring, the coach and the athlete, to be able to do that. And you have to do it while you're making decisions under pressure. So it is really, really difficult. And as you said, there's every chance that goes slightly differently. Ahmed goes away to his left. Luke sees the opportunity because Luke has to push there. And if there's a slight misjudgment, a short kick, a little bit of an over exaggerated lift, then Ahmed is true to the hand and that's over. And there's no opportunity for Luke to come back. So it's not a wrong decision necessarily. It's just the execution or the way it worked out. It didn't work out in his favour.
Well, I think as well, like in WACO, for example, when you have 2 coaches, that's where you could have one person who's on the chair. Their only job is to track that scoreboard. And all they're doing is just to watch the warnings, it's different obviously in kickboxing and WACO, they have exits, etc. But if we had the luxury of 2 people on the chair, you could literally just have one person focus on the board, the warnings, etc., and they could be just calling that, because obviously if you're the coach, you're focused on the moment, in the heat of the moment, trying to get your instructions through, help your fighter, and you don't always have the luxury of the replay and the rewinds like we have here as well. So
of course,
it's a very, very difficult job to be able to do it in the moment.
So let's have a look at the stats that kind of came out of this one, and in particular the types of actions that both fighters attempted across the match. And we can see straight away something very similar in terms of the amount of times they carried, and we'll see in a while it's very similar to the last match that we looked at in this weight class. But we can see definitely more from the kicking side of things in terms of the side kick, the turning kick and the hacks from Luke, and then as expected that little bit more in relation to the blitz, the front hand back fist, and so on from Ahmed.
Yeah, I think that we could have seen Ahmed use that carry a little bit more to set up his hands and his blitz, because he is very good at it. And if we look down at the blitz there, he was getting a little bit of success from that.
Yes.
But not that many attempted. So I think that could be something that he could focus on. I think that his strategy, from what I can tell, was trying to use that jumping back fist over Luke's leg as he lifted it. But just because he's he doesn't look like anybody else, and his timing and his distance are completely different. Just the way he even carries his chamber, it's very hard in 4 minutes to be able to get that read and to nail it every single time. And obviously Luke is aware of this as well. He knows what people are looking for. So his sidekick as well is a massive factor. Luke, everyone thinks, okay, he's got a really good hacks and Goro, whatever, and goes to the head, but he nails that hip a lot. And you can see there that big solid green bar on the sidekick, very effective both in attacking sidekick and defensive.
Yeah, he has huge reach on that one. So we see from both guys here that, you know, again, some of the things are quite typical about this. 11 restarts, it's very much the kind of thing that we see. We have a total of 8 warnings, but 6 of them over to Luke, as well as the foul. In terms of the overall work rate, 38 attempts from Ahmed, with 14 making contact, 37% success rate in terms of making contact. And then for Luke, 41 attempts, 23 making contact, so 56% contact rate. So that's, again, very little difference in terms of the level of activity, but a little bit more effective from Luke in terms of actually bringing himself into contact, which, you know, again, it really can tell. But we can see that there's 3 deductions for Luke as well. So he's going to have to get those higher value scores in order to make the most possible use of his work rate.
And we also, if we just flick back one time there,
yeah,
we can also see as well at that very last line there, like they essentially matched each other. I mean, 1.08, not a lot there really.
No.
But again, it for every single fight we've tracked so far, the person with the highest attempt rate is the person who's won the fight. So there's something to definitely keep into consideration. One action every 6.3 versus one action every 5.9. Very similar to what we've seen in the other 75 fight between Jahangir and Magomed. So I think the weight divisions are kind of a little bit of a telltale as well of what kind of work rate you can attempt. So usually the lighter guys in the 57s that we've tracked so far way more active, and here we see the average flag scores now as well. So a little bit of a new stat for people today. We have in brackets what the scores would be if the warnings and fouls were not in play. So just to give you an idea of where we would be if there was no warnings or if there was no fouls. So just another little dimension to look at this. So we have the average flag score of 4.5 for Ahmed and 5.75 for Luke. So not a big difference. We see that safety margin of 1.25. And then we see if Luke was able to not concede as many warnings and fouls, that would have been a bigger gap. So he would have had the luxury of it being a bit safer. Very similar in terms of techniques used. We have 7 versus 6. So focusing on their main weapons, of course, for this fight. First to contact is an important one. So Luke was first to contact 12 times. It doesn't mean that he initiated first 12 times, but he was the first to make contact anytime there was an exchange, and that sum there gives us 19 exchanges down in the black at the bottom, which is something to keep aware of as well. If you're making the better of 19 of those exchanges and you're getting the vast majority of those, you're going to be in a good position to win the fight. Decision flips, we had 4, which means that it wasn't too much of a back and forth. We had 4 decision flips, which is quite low generally. And then the flags in play at the end of the fight was 3. So if the warnings and fouls weren't in consideration and they weren't in this fight, it would only be 2 flags. So that tells us that the fight was up for grabs with the dying seconds, as we've seen. So it tells us it was a very close one in terms of the scoreboard in the end.
Yeah, and I mean, we can definitely see how that plays. And, you know, Luke definitely needed that big shot in the finish to pull things back around. Ahmed had been behind for quite a bit of the match, had done his work there in the kind of the second minute of the second round, got himself into a 3-0 lead, I think, before the flip happened. And then, you know, it's a big deal. You wonder as well, was it playing on his mind? I mean, I certainly wonder, was it playing on his mind that he was on the 2 warnings? That I certainly know for most competitors, that's the amount of information you can retain. You know, oh, I'm on 2 warnings. That's probably not good to concede another one when the match is close. So after that, it does play into the, well, how does that impact the last decisions or the final decisions and critical decisions in the match? So, you know, really exciting finish for this one. Last 30 seconds, electric.
Also, a big lesson for people to take away here, that you need to have a go-to shot to be able to finish out a match if you're behind. So that's something that you have to practice and also work on nailing that when the pressure's on. So if you have a shot that you can go to, ideally a high value score, so not particularly just the hands. If you can have a shot that you can squeeze the space and get the contact and pull out a big shot, something to have in the toolbox, it is going to be very, very effective for you in ITF competition.
Absolutely. So folks, that's what we have for you for this week. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. If you have questions, if you have thoughts, suggestions, or a match that you'd like to see us cover in the next weeks, please let us know in the comments, and we will get after that very, very, very soon.
See you in the next one.
Bye now.